Right now, if you stepped outside naked, you'd have maybe an hour before hypothermia started shutting your body down. But for over 800,000 years, that's exactly how your ancestors lived. No clothes, no fur, just bare skin against the open sky. Here's what makes that strange. Humans lost our body hair roughly 1 million years ago. We were already naked apes, long before we were smart apes. And the oldest evidence for clothing, hidden not in cloth, which rots away, but in the DNA of lice, doesn't show up until about 170,000 years ago. That leaves a gap, a brutal 800,000-year gap where your ancestors were hairless, coverless, and somehow still alive, through cold nights, through ice ages, through everything the world could throw at bare skin. So how did a naked, furless animal survive that long without a single stitch of clothing? The answer isn't just survival. It's the reason your body looks the way it does right now. To understand how your ancestors survived naked, you first have to understand why they went naked in the first place. And that wasn't an accident. It was a trade. Somewhere between 1 and 3 million years ago, early humans left the shaded forests and moved out onto the open African savanna, hot, sun-blasted, with almost nowhere to hide from the heat. Most primates handle that kind of heat by resting in the shade and moving as little as possible. Humans did the opposite. We started moving more, walking, running, hunting, for hours, in direct sun, at the hottest part of the day, when every other predator on the savanna was hiding. To do that without literally cooking your own brain, something had to give. And what gave was the fur. Paleoanthropologist Nina Jablonski, who has spent decades studying the evolution of human skin, argues that losing body hair and gaining millions of sweat glands was the trade-off that made this possible, swapping insulation for evaporative cooling. It's why humans have between 2 and 4 million sweat glands, far more than any other primate, while chimpanzees and gorillas stayed covered in thick fur and stuck to the shade. That trade brought us something extraordinary, the ability to outlast almost any animal on Earth in a straight chase, under the open sun. But it came at a brutal cost. The moment the sun went down, or the season turned cold, that same bare skin that kept us from overheating during the day became the thing that could kill us at night, which means your ancestors weren't just naked. They were naked on purpose. And for the next 800,000 years, survival meant solving the problem that decision created. The first thing that saved your ancestors was fire, but not in the way you'd think. The earliest solid evidence of controlled fire comes from Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa, dating back roughly 1 million years. That's long before clothing existed, and long before modern humans even evolved. Fire didn't just add warmth, it created a portable pocket of safety anywhere your ancestors went. A body that couldn't survive an open, cold night on its own could survive right next to a flame. For hundreds of thousands of years, fire was doing the job, clothing would eventually take over. But fire alone couldn't solve everything, especially once early hominins pushed into genuinely cold northern climates, far from the warm plains of Africa. And that's where the second strategy comes in. Skins before there was any such thing as clothing as we'd recognize it. At Qesem Cave in Israel, archaeologists have found evidence that as early as 420,000 years ago, humans were already wrapping meat in animal skins to store it. That tells us something important. They already understood skins as a tool, a wrapping, a covering. Not sewn, not fitted, just draped, wrapped, tied. In northwestern Europe, a study published in the Journal of Human Evolution found evidence that hominins used bear hides for warmth for at least 300,000 years, the oldest known example of humans using a large predator's own coat against the cold that killed it. This was the missing bridge in the story. Between naked skin and true clothing, there was a long middle phase of draped survival, a hide thrown over the shoulders at night, a skin laid down as bedding, not tailored to the body, but enough to blunt the worst of the cold, especially combined with fire, shelter, and huddling together in groups for shared body heat. And then, something changed the game entirely. Sometime between about 170,000 and 190,000 years ago, right around the same window that lice DNA studies point to for the origin of clothing, humans began doing something new, shaping hides to actually fit the body, rather than just draping them. The clearest sign of this leap shows up later in the archaeological record as bone sewing needles, some dated to between 90,000 and 120,000 years old, found at sites in Morocco and elsewhere. A needle means something specific. It means cutting, fitting, and stitching skins into garments. The difference between throwing on a blanket and wearing a coat. Here's the detail that makes this more than a technology story. A study published in the Journal of Anthropological Archaeology compared animal remains at sites used by early modern humans with sites used by Neanderthals living in the same cold regions of Europe. At modern human sites, researchers, including archaeologist Collard, who worked on the study, found far more bones from fur-bearing animals like wolverines, foxes, and rabbits, animals not typically hunted for meat. Their pelts don't freeze easily, which made them ideal for the fur ruffs framing a hood, and their remains show up alongside bone needles and evidence of hide tanning. Neanderthal sites in the same cold landscapes show far less of this. The clothing itself may have been simpler and less tailored. Researchers don't all agree on exactly how much this difference mattered. It's one piece of evidence among many for why modern humans thrived in Ice Age Europe while Neanderthals eventually disappeared, not a single proven cause. But it points to something striking. The difference between surviving the cold and truly conquering it may have come down to something as small as a needle, and the patience to use it. So, when you picture your ancestors, naked, hairless, standing on the open savanna a million years ago, don't picture them as helpless. Picture them as animals who had already made an impossible trade, giving up their fur to become the best long-distance hunters on the planet, and then spending the next 800,000 years slowly, patiently, inventing their way out of the cold that trade created. Fire bought them the night, skins bought them the winter, and somewhere around 170,000 years ago, a needle bought them the world. Every frozen forest, every mountain pass, every ice-age landscape that a bare-skinned primate had no business surviving in. You've never had to solve that problem. You'll never have to. But every jacket in your closet is the end of a chain that started with someone lying naked by a fire, figuring out how not to die before morning.